Why did he step back so quickly, like her touch was poison? The guard's shoulder was right there within reach, and all she meant was reassurance. A silent pat, nothing more. But the way he flinched, the way his boots scuffed backward against the concrete, left her frozen in place, left her ashamed. She lowered her hand slow, as if gravity had doubled. Around them, floodlights cut through the desert night. Engines rumbled in the distance. Radios cracked with static. Yet all she could hear was the sound of rejection, loud, inescapable, sharper than the rifles they carried. Her name was Captain Lena Voss, and tonight she wasn't sure if she belonged among them. No one said anything. The men at the gate avoided her eyes, one shifting his rifle strap, another pretending to check his watch. They weren't cruel, not openly, but silence can bruise deeper than words. She inhaled once, steady, masked her face with the kind of composure the academy drilled into her. She walked past the checkpoint, her boots tapping against the cracked cement. Inside the compound, light spilled out from the operations tent. Maps, screens, and the restless hum of soldiers inside. She pushed the moment down, buried it somewhere beneath her ribs, and forced herself to step in. The mission briefing had already started. Convoy expected at 0400, the colonel's voice echoed, rough, commanding. If they cross the valley before we intercept, we lose the advantage. Eyes sharp. No mistakes tonight. Lena stood at the edge of the room, helmet tucked under her arm. She listened not just to the words, but to the way everyone leaned forward when Sergeant King spoke, or how they nodded when Lieutenant Rourke added intel. When Lena's turn came, when the colonel's eyes landed on her, she felt the hesitation. A pause, like an extra second of wait before her name left his mouth. "Captain Voss," he said, "Sniper Overwatch East Ridge. Confirm your window." She nodded, crisp, professional. 0350, sir, no later. Her voice was steady, at least on the outside. But inside, questions stirred. Why did the guard flinch? Why did the colonel hesitate? Was it distrust or something unspoken, something she had failed to prove? She pushed the thought away. Not now, not before the mission. After the briefing, soldiers trickled out. Some lit cigarettes in the night air. Some checked their gear with the distracted calm of habit. Lena lingered, watching them. The camaraderie hung between the men, invisible threads of jokes, scars, and shared burdens. She wasn't blind to it. She wanted to step closer, to be part of it, but her boots felt anchored. Then a voice broke the quiet. "You ready, Captain?" It was Corporal Mason, younger than her by nearly a decade, freckles across his face, his helmet tilted back just enough to break regulation. He smiled faintly, like he could sense the distance she carried. "As ready as anyone gets," Lena replied. He hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. "My brother, he didn't make it back last year. Same road you're covering tonight." Her chest tightened. There it was, the reminder of why this mission mattered. Not numbers, not coordinates. Lives, losses, empty chairs at family tables. She met Mason's eyes, and for a moment there was no rank, no wall between them. Just two people carrying weight too heavy for words. "I'll watch it," she said softly. "I promise." His nod was small, but it held something like trust. Later, when the convoy prepped to move, Lena climbed into the back of the Humvee, rifle case across her knees. The ride to the ridge was rough, tires crunching gravel, headlights slicing through the dark. No one spoke much. The driver hummed under his breath. Mason tapped his boot in a nervous rhythm. Lena closed her eyes, listening to every sound, the groan of metal, the rattle of gear, letting it ground her. But beneath the surface, her thoughts wandered. Back to a farmhouse 2,000 miles away, to a brother who never came home, to a folded flag that still sat on her mother's mantle. This mission wasn't abstract. It wasn't orders on paper. It was personal. Every convoy that slipped through meant another family staring at an empty doorway. She had sworn she wouldn't let that happen again. The Humvee jerked to a stop. "End of the line," the driver muttered. Lena stepped out. The air was sharp with dust. The valley stretched below, wide and silent, moonlight brushing its edges in pale silver. She shouldered her pack, feeling the weight settle deep into her muscles. Mason followed, lugging extra rounds. "Looks clear," he said, scanning the horizon. "Looks are never enough," Lena answered. They moved up the ridge, boots crunching stone, each step deliberate. The climb burned her thighs, sweat slicking beneath her vest. By the time they reached the overlook, her pulse was steady again, focused, aligned with the rhythm of the mission. She unfolded the bipod, set the rifle down, and pressed her cheek against the stock. Through the scope, the valley became a different world, magnified, alive with shadows. Time passed slow. Wind hissed against her ear. Mason sat nearby, scribbling in a notebook, something he always carried, pages smudged with pencil. He caught her glance. "Helps me breathe," he murmured. "What do you write?" she asked, surprising herself. "Thoughts, prayers, stupid jokes, stuff I don't say out loud." She almost smiled, almost, because wasn't that what she did too, except instead of words she carried silence. Hours bled together. The night stretched thin. Every creak of rock, every stir of air felt like it carried meaning. Then movement, dust trails on the horizon, headlights flickering faint in the dark. The convoy. Her muscles coiled, breath slowed, finger hovered. Mason whispered something she didn't catch. The trucks rolled closer, engines growling. She counted them. 1, 2, 3 too many, more than the intel briefed. Her chest tightened. The plan had already shifted. Through the scope she saw faces, shadows leaning out of truck beds, weapons clutched. She steadied her aim. But then something strange. A fourth vehicle, smaller, armored, riding at the rear. A mark painted across its side she didn't recognize. Her finger froze above the trigger. What was that? Why hadn't they known? Her comm crackled, the colonel's voice tense. "Voss, do you see it? Confirm visual." She swallowed. Visual confirmed. Unknown insignia advise. Static, then silence, the kind that stretches too long. Her heart thudded. Choices pressed in. If she fired, the fight began. If she hesitated, the convoy might slip through. But deeper still, something told her this wasn't just another target. Something about that vehicle, the way it lagged, the way no one guarded it, whispered of something hidden. And she knew one thing with sharp, unshakable clarity. She couldn't tell them everything, not yet. Why didn't command answer her? The silence dragged, thick and suffocating, pressing harder against her chest than the weight of her vest. She kept her cheek welded to the rifle stock, eyes locked on the mysterious fourth vehicle. The convoy rolled closer, engines pulsing like a heartbeat in the valley. Finally, the radio clicked alive. "Voss, hold position. Do not engage until confirmed." Her stomach sank. That wasn't the colonel's voice. It was clipped, unfamiliar, someone she hadn't heard before. Mason looked at her, confusion cutting through the moonlight. Who was that? She didn't answer, couldn't, because deep inside a cold ripple spread, an instinct honed from months in hostile terrain. Something was wrong. Someone else was on their channel. The truck slowed as they approached the choke point. She adjusted the scope, breath shallow. Shadows shifted inside the open trucks. She could see the edges of rifles, hands gripping tight. But the last vehicle, the one with the strange insignia, moved differently, hanging back, almost hesitant. "Captain," Mason whispered, "what if they're carrying?" "I know," she cut him off. He didn't have to say it. Weapons, ammo, or worse, civilians. Her finger twitched above the trigger, the valley air dry in her throat. She thought of her brother then, his last phone call before deployment, his laugh as he promised he'd come home. That laugh had gone silent forever, stolen by men in convoys like this. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. Orders said wait. Instinct screamed act. She shifted the crosshairs toward the driver of the lead truck. Just one squeeze and the valley would erupt. But then, a flash of movement. The armored vehicle's side door cracked open. A small figure leaned out. Her breath caught. Not a soldier. A child. She blinked hard, steadying her scope. The boy's face was pale in the moonlight, maybe 8, maybe 9. He looked around, confused, frightened, clutching something to his chest. She zoomed tighter. A book, a ragged, dirt-stained book. Her chest constricted. All the gears of war froze. Because suddenly this wasn't about strategies or maps. This was about a child in the middle of death's machinery. Mason's voice was raw. "Captain, tell me I'm not seeing that." "You're seeing it," she whispered. The comms hissed again, the same foreign voice. "Voss, do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." Her jaw clenched. Whoever that was, they weren't sitting up here watching through a scope. They weren't staring at a boy caught between trucks loaded with men who would kill without hesitation. She wanted to respond, to demand answers, but another voice cut through the channel, finally the colonel's. "Voss, hold your shot. Repeat, hold your shot." Her throat tightened. The conflict inside her roared. Obey, defy, protect. She remembered Mason's words about his brother. She remembered her mother holding the folded flag. And now she remembered this boy, one life, dangling on the edge of her decision. The convoy crawled forward. Every second the trucks neared the curve that would take them out of sight, out of range. Her body went still, the way it always did before the shot. Silence pressed close. The valley itself seemed to hold its breath. And then something unexpected. The child lifted his head, looked directly toward her ridge, and raised the book high above him. A signal. Her blood ran cold. He wasn't just cargo, he was trying to be seen. Mason whispered, almost reverent, "He knows we're here." The air was sharp with decision. Her finger brushed the trigger, just a hair, but she didn't fire, not yet. Because if she fired now, bullets would rain, trucks would scatter, that boy would be the first casualty. She shifted instead, pulling her eye from the scope for the first time in minutes. She inhaled once, deep, tasting the grit of the night air. "Mason," she said softly, "mark this, we're not letting that convoy vanish, not tonight." He nodded, fumbling for his notebook, sketching quick, desperate lines. She guided him, roads, turns, the emblem on the vehicle, anything that would matter later. Below, the trucks rumbled past. The boy vanished inside again, the armored door slamming shut. The convoy disappeared into the valley curve, swallowed by shadows. And Lena felt something worse than failure. She felt helpless. She pulled away from the rifle, slumping against the stone. The silence afterward was brutal. Her pulse still hammered, but the chance was gone. Mason spoke first. "You did the right thing, Captain." She shook her head. "The right thing doesn't feel like this." They packed in silence, the valley echoing with nothing but wind. By the time the Humvee came to pick them up, dawn had begun to bleed across the horizon. Back at the compound, questions waited like knives. The colonel's eyes burned across the table. "Why didn't you take the shot?" She held her ground, shoulders squared. "Because it wasn't what we thought. Intel was wrong. There was a child in that convoy." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some scoffed, some went quiet. The colonel's jaw tightened. "We had a window, and you let it close." Her fists clenched under the table. "Sir, with respect, if I had fired, that child would be dead." The colonel's glare didn't soften, but he didn't argue either. Instead, he dismissed the room, leaving Lena standing in the echo of doubt. Outside, soldiers lit cigarettes, trading stories of near misses and close calls. No one spoke to her. No one asked what she saw. To them, it was a hesitation, a mistake. But Mason stayed close. He scribbled something in his notebook and tore the page free. He slipped it into her hand as they walked. She unfolded it later, alone in her quarters. A sketch of the boy, the book raised high, and below it Mason had written, "Sometimes the hardest shot is the one you don't take." Her throat tightened. She sat on the cot, staring at the page until the edges blurred. But even as the words comforted, questions gnawed at her. Who gave that order on the comms? Why didn't Command know about the fourth vehicle? And why did that boy look like he was waiting for her? There was something she hadn't told anyone. Not yet. Something buried deep, locked away like a secret scar. And as the night faded, she realized it was clawing back to the surface. Because years ago, long before she was Captain Voss, she had seen a face like his. A boy clutching a book. A child she couldn't save. And this time she swore to herself she wouldn't fail again. Why was she dreaming of that farmhouse again? The smell of cut grass, the creak of the old porch swing, the sound of her brother's voice calling her name across the yard. It all came back in vivid detail, sharp as broken glass. Except when she turned to answer him, the yard was empty. Only silence. Only the folded flag on the porch steps. Lena woke with her throat tight, the image burned behind her eyes. Dawn light spilled through the canvas walls of her quarters, soft, merciless. She rubbed her face, forcing herself upright, every muscle aching from the night on the ridge. But the ache inside her, that was worse. The boy's face haunted her. That book, that signal, it wasn't chance, she knew it. Outside, the compound stirred to life. Boots thudded, radios buzzed, coffee burned in tin cups. Soldiers moved like gears in a machine, each in rhythm with orders, with habit. She joined the motion, slipping into her role. But the silence between her and the others was louder than words. They hadn't forgiven her. Maybe they never would. She checked her rifle, cleaned it piece by piece, metal shining under her cloth. Precision steadied her, but it didn't erase the memory of the convoy vanishing into the night. By midday she was called to the colonel's tent. He stood over a map, jaw tight, eyes hard. "Sit," he said. She did back straight, hands folded in her lap. "The brass isn't happy. Intel missed a fourth vehicle, and now we don't know what slipped past. I gave you an order to fire." Her voice was calm, even if her chest was. "And I made a call, sir. If I had fired that child." "We're not here to debate morality, Captain," he snapped. Then softer, a sigh breaking through. "But Mason backed your report. He sketched that vehicle in detail. That boy. Higher command is listening." Listening but not believing. Not yet. The colonel leaned forward. "You've put me in a difficult position, but maybe you can fix it. Recon drone picked up tracks east leading to the foothills. If that convoy set up there, we need confirmation. You'll go. Quiet. No mistakes this time." Her pulse quickened. A second chance or a trap. "Understood, sir." He studied her a long moment. "Voss, I don't know what you're chasing, but remember, your job isn't to save children. It's to complete the mission." She didn't answer, because inside she knew he was wrong. Her job was both. Later, she found Mason near the motor pool, hunched over his notebook again. She told him about the recon tasking. His eyes lit with something between fear and resolve. "I'm in," he said before she finished. "You don't have to be," she replied. "Yeah," he smirked faintly, "but someone's got to write the ending to this." That night they moved out. No convoy, no Humvees, just them on foot, packs heavy, silence heavier. The desert stretched wide and merciless, stars scattered above like broken glass. Every crunch of their boots felt too loud, every shadow alive with suspicion. Hours passed. Sweat soaked her collar, dust coated her tongue. They spoke little, conserving breath, conserving trust. But in the quiet, Mason finally asked the question that had been hanging between them. "Why'd you hesitate, Captain? I mean really hesitate, before you saw the kid?" She stiffened, almost stumbled. His voice wasn't accusing, it was searching, honest. She thought of lying, of brushing it off with words like instinct or doubt. But something about his eyes, young yet scarred, demanded truth. "Because," she said at last, "years ago in another mission I saw a boy, same age, same eyes. I was told he was a decoy, just a distraction. We didn't hesitate then. We fired." The desert air cut sharp against her throat. And later, when we searched, it wasn't a decoy. He was just a boy, holding a book. I never forgot his face. Mason walked in silence beside her. His jaw worked, his breath steady. Then finally, "So you swore you'd never make that mistake again?" "Yes." "Then don't let them tell you it was wrong," he said. Her chest tightened, because hearing it from him made it sound almost possible. They reached the foothills near dawn. Jagged stone rose against the horizon, shadows pooled in the gullies. They crouched, scanning the terrain. Tire tracks cut deep into the dirt, fresh, leading into a narrow pass. Mason scribbled quickly, "They're here." They moved slow, silent. Lena's senses sharpened, every nerve tuned to danger. The smell of burned fuel lingered. The faint echo of voices carried through the rocks. Foreign, low, harsh. She raised a fist, "Halt." Mason froze. She peered through her scope. There they were. The convoy tucked in a ravine, trucks idle, men unloading crates. Weapons gleamed in the low light. And there, the armored vehicle, parked to the side, door open. Her heart stuttered. The boy was there. He sat on the ground, back against the tire, book clutched tight. Two guards nearby, bored, inattentive. Lena's breath caught. It was him. Flesh and blood, not a ghost of memory. Mason whispered, "What now?" Her mind raced. Protocol said report, call it in, wait for orders. But she knew what orders would come: strike hard, strike fast, collateral be damned. And the boy, he wouldn't survive. Her hand trembled on the rifle, not from fear, from the weight of choice. For a moment she saw her brother's face overlay the boy's. She heard her mother's sobs. She remembered the empty, flag-draped coffin. She whispered to Mason, voice tight, "We're not calling this in yet, not until I know why that boy is here." He stared at her, stunned, but then slowly he nodded. They lay in silence, watching, waiting. Hours bled. Soldiers moved crates, argued, smoked. The boy barely moved, his book his only shield. And then something strange. A man stepped from the largest truck. Tall, commanding, scar traced down his cheek. He crouched beside the boy, speaking low. The boy flinched, clutching the book tighter. The man laughed harsh, then walked away. Lena's jaw clenched. She didn't know who he was, but her gut told her he mattered. That scarred face wasn't just another enemy. Mason scribbled furiously, "He's in charge, you can see it." "Yes," she whispered, "and if we take him alive." Her words trailed, because the thought itself was dangerous, risky, almost impossible. But inside, a fire burned. Because for the first time since her brother's death, she felt like there was more than grief to carry. There was a chance, slim, fragile, to make something right. The boy shifted then, tilting his head, eyes scanning the ridge. For a heartbeat, Lena swore he was looking straight at her. She froze. Did he know? Could he sense her there, watching? The boy lifted the book again. Not high this time, but enough. A small, desperate gesture. And Lena realized something that made her pulse thunder. He wasn't just signaling for rescue. He was waiting for her. Why did the boy's eyes look so certain? He sat in the dust, book clutched like a shield, gaze tilted up toward the ridge where Lena lay hidden. The guards around him didn't notice. The soldiers unloading crates didn't notice, but she felt it. That connection. That silent tether pulling at her chest. Mason whispered, barely breathing the words. "Captain, he sees you." Lena's finger hovered near the trigger guard, but she didn't lift the rifle. Not yet. The choice pressed against her like a loaded weight, to stay shadows or to reveal herself in some way, and either path carried danger. The scarred man reappeared. His voice carried even from this distance, sharp, commanding, cruel. He barked orders and men scattered to follow them. His presence reshaped the air around the camp, the way gravity bends space. Whoever he was, they obeyed him without question. Her scope followed his movements. The scar down his cheek, the cold precision in his stride, the way he glanced at the boy as though he were an object, not a child. A chill crawled through Lena. This man wasn't just a commander. He was a warden, and the boy his prisoner. The radio at her side hissed softly. "Voss report status." She flinched, Mason tensed, the colonel's voice heavy and expectant. She pressed the transmit button, whispering low. "Convoy located, enemy strength higher than briefed, at least 24 heavily armed, crates unloading, confirmed unknown leader present." She hesitated, her eyes lingered on the boy, on the book. "Also, non-combatant confirmed on site." Static filled the gap. Then the colonel's reply clipped in cold. "Copy, hold position. Reinforcements inbound, prepare to mark targets." Her hand slipped from the radio. The words curdled in her stomach. "Prepare to mark targets." The boy wasn't part of that sentence. He wasn't part of the plan. Mason's whisper cut the silence. "They'll storm this place. You know they will." She didn't answer. She didn't need to, because the truth was written in the weight of her silence. Hours stretched. The sun climbed, baking the stones, burning her skin even through fabric. Sweat trickled down her spine, but she didn't move. She couldn't. Not when every glance at the boy anchored her there. At one point, the child opened the book, flipped its worn pages with trembling fingers. Mason angled his binoculars. "What's he reading?" Lena focused her scope tighter. The pages were ragged, edges stained, words faded. But she caught glimpses, not scripture, not propaganda, stories. Children's stories, drawings of forests, rivers, skis, places far from war. Her throat tightened. "He's holding on to something," she murmured, "something normal." The scarred man barked again, dragging her out of thought. He motioned for guards to move the boy into the truck. 2 men yanked him up, book clutched desperately in his hands. Mason hissed, "They're taking him." Lena's muscles locked. This was it, the choice. If the boy was loaded into that truck, he might vanish forever. Another ghost, another regret carved into her memory. Her finger found the trigger, slowly, deliberately. She whispered to Mason, "If I take out the guard on the left, you'll have to move fast. We grab the boy, get him out before they know what's happening." Mason's eyes widened. "Captain, that's suicide." "Maybe," she said, steady, "but it's worse if we do nothing." Her pulse slowed, every breath calibrated. She centered the crosshairs over the guard's chest. One squeeze, just one. But then the boy shifted. Subtle, barely noticeable, he shook his head. Lena froze. Through the scope she saw his lips move. No sound carried, but she could read it. One word, wait. Her breath hitched. Mason stared at her. "What's he?" "Wait," she whispered. The guards shoved the boy, but he stumbled deliberately, dropping the book into the dirt. One guard cursed, yanked him forward. The boy resisted just enough to reach down and snatch the book again, clutching it like oxygen. But Lena's scope had caught something. On the inside cover of the book, just for a second, a glint of ink, a mark, a symbol she recognized. Her pulse spiked. That symbol wasn't random. It was intel she'd seen in classified files, a resistance emblem, small, almost forgotten. The boy wasn't just cargo, he was connected, important, a signal of something larger than any of them understood. Mason hissed again, "Captain, talk to me, what's happening?" She tore her eye from the scope, voice low, urgent. "He's not just a prisoner, he's carrying something, a message. That symbol, it's not by accident." Mason's eyes widened as the weight of it sank in. The radio crackled again, the colonel's voice. "Voss, reinforcements 2 clicks out. Mark the targets, prepare for engagement." She stared at the boy, his small frame dwarfed by armed men, his book clutched like a lifeline. She stared at the scarred man, commanding, ruthless, the kind who would burn villages to ash without hesitation. Her finger twitched, her lungs burned. And in that unbearable stillness, Lena realized something terrible. If she called in the strike now, the boy would die. If she disobeyed, her career would end, and worse, Her team could be left exposed, unsupported. She thought of her brother, his empty promise, the folded flag, her mother's silence. She couldn't live with another ghost. "Captain," Mason whispered, voice trembling, "what are we doing?" She closed her eyes just for a second, and when she opened them, her decision was carved into stone. "We're changing the mission." Mason swallowed hard, face pale, but he nodded, not because he agreed, but because he trusted her enough to follow. She reached for the radio. Thumb hovered over the transmit button. Her voice, when it came, was steady, clear, unshakable. "Command, this is Voss, marking targets now." She clicked the laser designator, sweeping it across the enemy trucks, avoiding the armored vehicle with the boy. She marked crates, fuel supplies, weapon caches, but not the boy, never the boy. The colonel's voice snapped back. "Targets received, strike inbound, hold position." Lena's chest pounded. She whispered to Mason, "When the chaos starts, we move, straight for the boy, no hesitation." Mason's lips tightened, but he nodded. Below, the camp buzzed with oblivion. Men smoked, argued, checked rifles. The boy sat back against the tire, clutching his book, eyes still searching the ridge. Lena whispered to herself, voice low, fierce, unyielding, "Hold on, kid, just a little longer." The distant whine of aircraft engines reached her ears, low, rising, growing louder with every heartbeat. And for the first time in years, Lena felt her fear sharpen into something stronger, resolve. Because she wasn't going to let another child vanish into dust, not this time. Why did the sky sound like a blade? The first thunder of the strike rolled through the valley like a fist against metal, not thunder, engines. Low, violent. The air itself bent toward the sound. Lena felt it in her teeth. It vibrated through stone, through bone. It made everything very small and very loud at once. She tightened her grip on the bipod as the first ordnance bloomed below. Heat and dust rose like a sudden storm. The truck she'd marked detonated in slow motion. Black smoke unfurling, metal shivering, crates erupting into flame. Men ran like ants upended, shouting, swearing, shocked into motion. The scarred commander cursed, slammed his fist into a crate, then barked orders. Chaos, brutal, messy, perfect. Lena's world narrowed to the ridge and to the boy tucked near the armored vehicle. Mason's hand found hers, a single squeeze that said everything and nothing. They'd planned for this. Not the hits, those would come. They'd planned for the chaos after. The gap, the blind spot when the enemy scrambled and the ridge could move. "Now," she mouthed. Mason slid down the rock with practiced clumsiness, breath controlled, knees soft. Lena followed, rifle slung, designator cold and dark at her hip. The world below roared, whistle of secondary explosions, men running in every direction. A shadow crossed their path, one of the aircraft doing low passes to seek secondary targets. Lena flattened herself into a wash of stone as shards of gravel peppered her skin. They moved like ghosts, not because stealth was possible, because stealth was what little they had. Guns erupted unpredictably, crack, crack, drawn towards the burn of the trucks. Smoke choked the valley air, carrying a metallic tang of melted plastic and fuel. Mason led. Lena watched his back, watched that small nervous set of his shoulders that became brave in the moment he needed to be. He was young. He'd seen friends die because of mistakes. That old hurt pushed him forward now. They slipped between blasted crates, keeping low, timing their breath to the staccato of gunfire. The boy was not where they expected. Lena's stomach dropped like a missing step. He had been in the shadow of the armored truck, until the scarred commander started barking, until hands grabbed, until confusion gave them cover. Now, a silhouette ran toward the tree line with the book hugged to the chest. "Left flank," Mason hissed. "He's moving toward the ravine." His voice was shredded with panic and strategy. Lena didn't count the options. There were only two rules she'd ever trusted: move with the gap and keep the human in front of you alive if you can. She ran. Adrenaline opened her vision. Sound sharpened into dados, the snap of a rifle, the slap of boots, Mason cursing under his breath. She caught sight of the boy ahead, small against the stone, knees bent, lungs working too hard for his age. He ran with the awkwardness of a child who'd been taught to be quiet in a loud place. A guard spotted him, a shout, then a rifle spit. The first round hit the ground between the boy's heels, throwing up grit. The second bit the hillside a meter away, a crater blooming in dust. The boy stumbled. "Now," Lena shouted. Mason barreled forward, diving, grabbing at the book before the boy could be yanked back into a line of arms. His fingers closed on paper, on leather, on a child's drawings. He yelled, half a command, half a prayer. The boy looked up, eyes wide, impossible with fear and an ember of trust, and then a shadow fell over them. Lena saw the scarred commander's hand swinging a rifle butt. It connected with Mason's shoulder. Mason's body bucked, but he didn't let go of the book. The commander barked an order, men converged. Lena's training told her to kill the threat. Her heart told her something else. She moved. Her rifle came up in 2 seconds. The first target was the guard who'd fired. She didn't aim center mass. She aimed to stop, to wound. Small margin for error, because a clean, lethal shot would do more than silence a gun. It would make use of the boy impossible. She fired. The guard went down with a wet sound. Others turned. For a breathless second, time folded. Lena and Mason dove toward the boy. Mason tucked the child against his chest like a shield. The boy's fingers trembled around the book. They ran. They didn't get far. Someone's boot found Mason's ankle and the two of them went down in a tangle. Lena scrambled to pull them up. The scarred commander was there, closer than she'd calculated, eyes bright with fury. He swung again with a metal rod. Lena ducked the blow. The rod clipped her shoulder. Pain exploded, hot and immediate, but she didn't release. She drove her shoulder weight into the man's ribs and took him to the dirt, wrestling for control of the rod. He was bigger. He was meaner. He had a lifetime of cruelty behind his hands. Mason rolled, pushing the boy back over his shoulder. The child vomited a sound that was half scream, half sob. Lena fought the commander who had the wrong kind of smile and the wrong kind of light. He had the gall to reach for his pistol. Lena's fingers closed on his wrist, twisting, firing the weapon into the ground, a spark of metal and grit. The commander snarled, grabbed, and for a moment Lena thought she would feel the irrevocable stab of metal. She grunted, pulled, struck with the butt of the rod, and the world spasmed with the impact. She hit the commander again with the butt. He went limp enough for her to bind his hands with a strap stolen from a fallen pack. Her breathing was ragged. Pain threaded through her shoulder. Blood smeared across her sleeve. She tasted iron every time she swallowed. Mason crawled back to her side, book clutched against the boy's chest. He looked at Lena, wild, incredulous, bright with the shock of surviving. His face had a smear of blood on the lip, a cut above the eyebrow, and a grin that was more a question than joy. "You good?" he rasped. "Alive," she said. It was both an answer and a promise. They didn't have time to relish the breath. Reinforcements, hostile, moving in from the eastern gullies, began to converge. The valley had filled with shapes, men with faces like stone, men who smelled of spent gunpowder and older hate. Lena radioed, voice low. "Voss to Colonel. Extraction compromised. Abort pickup. We have a non-combatant. Need egress vector, southwest ridgeline, 2 minutes." Static swallowed the channel. For a beat she thought command might damned well leave them. Then the colonel's voice stabbed through, hard, clipped. "Voss, you were told." "We have the child," Lena cut in. "We are moving now." A silence, then softer than she expected. "Copy, pulling alternate, 2 minutes." She didn't feel relief. She felt the hollow of exhaustion. 2 minutes was nothing. 2 minutes was everything. They moved like a trio stitched together by urgency. Lena hauling the scarred commander, Mason protecting the boy pressed into Mason's chest as if he could feel safety as an object. The book lay open in Mason's hand, inked pages fluttering with the wind. They reached the southwest ridge with the valley howling below and the sky a smear of distant white. The extraction site was a jagged shelf of stone. They huddled low. Lena checked the horizon with a speed that steadied her breath. The enemy closed in, running in a pattern like hungry wolves. She sighted a path, a narrow line between boulders that could give them cover to the pickup if the birds above didn't notice smoke. She'd seen worse odds. She'd seen worse failures. She'd also seen that being right felt thin until it was concrete. The rotors thumped like a second pulse. A dust devil rose in spirals, pinning their cheeks with grit. The aircraft, an unmarked Black Hawk, dipped low, skimming along the ridgeline. A rope ladder unfurled. Eyes met eyes between the crew and Lena. There was an understanding, no questions, no moralizing. They were there to get humans out of danger. It was a simple, savage mercy. Hands grabbed their harnesses. Lena hauled Mason up. The boy clung like a seed to Mason's chest. For a moment, Lena wasn't fast enough. She felt her boots snag, tried to kick free, and then a gloved hand wrapped around her wrist. Someone, one of the extraction team, pulled. Pain shot through her shoulder. A sharp yank. The last thing she saw as she hooked her leg over the skid was the scarred commander still crawling, rage flaring like a red flag. He fired once. The round hit the skid, shuddered. Metal screamed. Lena's chest spilled a hot animal fear. They climbed inside. The machine bucked, rose, and for a breath she thought they'd made it. Then the tail of the valley filled with smoke and the sound of more men moving quickly to close the gap. The rotor wash carried the smell of burning. The boy hiccuped. Mason's knees trembled. Lena's shoulder burned like a coal in a pot. They touched down back at the compound in a flurry of sand and dust and shouted names. Medics swarmed, bottles popped, hands pressed at wounds. The colonel stood there, face closed like a stone mask. He watched as the boy was led toward a tent with blankets and warm tea. He watched Lena retreating, stripped of adrenaline and very aware of the ache. "You disobeyed direct order," he said when Lena stood before him, shoulder bandaged, shirt dark with dust and blood. He didn't shout. He rarely did that. He held himself like a man who knew the cost of a command. Lena looked at him for a long time. Around them soldiers murmured, some with grudging approval, some with thin-lipped disapproval. Mason sat nearby, hands shaking, and a medic rapped his own burned knuckles. "We saved a child, sir," Lena said, voice small and steady. "He was marked. He had something important. We extracted him." The colonel's breath fogged in the dry air. "You put 3 soldiers at risk. You put the mission at risk." Mason spoke then, voice raw. "Captain didn't do it for medals, sir. She did it because it was the right thing." The colonel's face softened for half a second, then he looked away. "Right thing, the right thing has costs." His eyes found Lena. "We will account for every cost." She didn't flinch. She had a hard, quiet thing inside her now. A child had a book. The book had a mark. The mark had meaning. They had him. For now, that was a victory, small, fragile, absolute. Lena walked away, boots heavy, mind oddly empty and full at the same time. She sat on the cot inside her tent and opened her palm. Mason's torn sketch lay there. The boy, the book, the symbol, and under it, in Mason's messy scrawl. "Sometimes the hardest thing is to move with your hands, not just your orders." She pressed her thumb to the page until it left a print. Her chest felt both lighter and heavier. A man had a scar on his cheek out there, and he would not like this. There would be consequences. There always were. But the boy slept on a cot nearby, breathing shallow, clutching the book like a talisman. In the dim light of the tent, Lena watched the rise and fall of his chest and let herself exhale. Night moved in like a curtain. Outside, distant fires still burned where the convoy had been. The radios hummed their unending, indifferent noise. Lena traced the bandage on her shoulder. Pain was a clean proof that something had happened. Regret came in a softer, slower flare. Before sleep took her, she whispered into the darkness, an admission, an oath. "I won't let another face haunt me like that, not when I can do anything to stop it." The boy's small hand poked through the blanket for a moment. He didn't know her name. He didn't need to know it yet. For now he knew the shape of safety, 2 soldiers who had risked the lot of them for him. That was enough for a night. And out in the compound, the colonel calculated consequences. Plans would be redrawn, questions would be asked, men would say the right things to the right people. The scarred commander would want answers. He would find them if he could. But for a single held-breath hour, the kind that collects like a coin in the palm of your hand, Lena let herself hold the image of the boy with the book. She let the simple victory sit like a warm stone in her chest. Small, human, real. The future would come with its reckoning. For now they had a life. For now that was enough. Why was the book so heavy in his hands? It wasn't weight, not really. It was paper, leather, ink. But Mason kept turning it over, kept feeling the spine as if the object might open its throat and speak. The boy had fallen asleep, curled on a cot under too many blankets. His chest rose in tiny, tired rhythms. Lena sat near him, one shoulder bandaged, eyes hollow, watching the tent flap move with the night wind. Mason finally broke the silence. "You think it's just a diary?" Lena didn't answer at first. Her gaze was somewhere past the canvas walls, somewhere in the smoldering black of the valley they'd left behind. Smoke still carried up there, faint ribbons lit by the moon. "He risked everything for it," she said. "Kids don't cling like that unless someone told them it's more than pages." Mason flipped the cover again. The first page was simple, almost childish. Lines drawn in charcoal, a house with 3 figures. A man with a scar across his cheek, drawn exaggerated, ugly. And under it, words scratched in uneven hand. A language Mason didn't know. He looked at her. Could be maps, could be names. He lowered his voice. Could be nothing, just a child's drawings. Lena finally turned. Her eyes were sharp in the dim light. Then why did that man chase him like he was carrying fire? The tent shifted with a gust. The boy stirred, murmured something in a tongue neither of them understood, and tightened his grip on the blanket. Mason set the book gently beside him. Silence stretched. Then Lena spoke again, softer. "I had a brother once. Drew in notebooks like that, kept them under his bed, never let anyone touch them. When the shelling started, she stopped, swallowed, looked down at her hands. He didn't get to save them, not him, not the books, just gone." Mason watched her carefully. He'd heard fragments before, rumors, whispers, but never from her own mouth. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't. The silence between them was heavy enough. Outside, boots crunched. A guard passed, murmuring to another. Lena stiffened, instinct alive again. She brushed the boy's hair from his forehead. "He doesn't belong in this place," she whispered. "And yet, here he is." Mason nodded, almost to himself. "Then we have to figure out why." The next day was questions. The colonel, voice clipped, eyes colder. Interrogators leafing through the book, brow furrowed, whispering in languages Lena half recognized. Every time they tried to take it from the boy, he cried, clutched harder, silent tears streaking his face. Finally, Lena intervened. "Let him hold it," she said. The colonel's glare was enough to slice, but she didn't flinch. "You disobeyed me once already, Captain. Don't push again." Her jaw locked. "He's a child, sir. If the book means something, he won't give it up until he knows he's safe. You know that as well as I do." For a moment she thought he'd crush her with orders, drag her out, make an example. Instead, he looked at her, long, tired, and waved her off. "Fine, but you stay with him, every second. If this blows up, it's on your head." Mason shot her a look later, equal parts warning and admiration. She didn't respond. She just sat near the boy as he traced the drawings in silence. That night when the compound quieted and the cold set in, Lena heard the boy whisper. Not to her, to the book. She couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm was prayer-like. She lay on her cot, eyes open, the sound etching itself into her chest. And somewhere in the dark, she knew the scarred commander was not finished. He had crawled from the dirt with rage in his eyes. He had seen her face. He had heard her voice. And men like him did not forget. The valley would not stay silent for long. What was hidden in a child's drawings that men would kill for? The question hung in Lena's mind like smoke that wouldn't clear. The compound had its routines: boots at dawn, rifles checked and rechecked, the sharp whistle of the cook calling stragglers for rations. But since the boy arrived, nothing felt routine. Soldiers stole glances at him. Some pitied him. Some resented him. All whispered about the book. Lena hadn't slept more than a handful of hours. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the scarred commander's face. The way his eyes had locked on the boy, not with hatred but with hunger. She knew that look. She'd seen men fight for weapons, for territory, for revenge. This was different. This was possession. Mason slid into the tent just after dawn. His face looked younger in the pale light, almost fragile. He held a tin cup of bitter coffee, passed it to Lena, then crouched by the cot where the boy still slept. The book was pressed against his chest like armor. "Interpreters had a look," Mason whispered. "It's not just drawings. Some pages are maps, crude, but they line up: routes, valleys, depots." Lena took a slow sip, her throat tight. How could a child draw that? He shook his head. Maybe he didn't. Maybe someone told him to. Or maybe, he stopped, glancing at the boy's thin face. Maybe he just remembered what he saw. Lena set the tin down. "And if that commander gets it back? Those depots go dark, our supply lines, maybe worse." Mason's voice dropped lower. "Colonel's already planning transfer. They'll fly him out tomorrow." The boy stirred then, mumbling words that didn't belong to either of them. Lena leaned closer, brushing his hair back, and asked softly, "What is it you're carrying, little one?" He didn't answer, but his fingers tightened on the book. By afternoon, the compound trembled with unease. Distant booms rolled like echoes from the valley. Scouts reported unusual movement, fighters shifting, setting up. It was the kind of silence before storm every soldier recognized. Lena walked the perimeter, watching men clean weapons with more aggression than care. One corporal, barely 20, stared too long at the horizon. She stopped beside him. "First deployment?" she asked. He nodded without meeting her eyes. "Didn't think it'd feel like this. Waiting's worse than fighting." She rested a hand on the sandbag wall. "It always is. Waiting gives the enemy room in your head." He swallowed hard. "Captain, do you think they'll come for him, the boy?" She didn't lie. "Yes." The corporal exhaled, shaky. But he nodded, as if her honesty steadied him more than comfort ever could. Night fell with a weight that pressed on every chest. Lena stayed near the boy's cot, Mason across from her, both rifles propped within reach. The boy finally woke after hours of restless turning. His eyes, too old for his face, found Lena. He spoke in halting words, fragments of her language broken by his own. "They want book." Lena leaned closer. "Why, what's in it?" He hesitated. His small hands opened the cover, flipped to a page near the middle. Drawings of trucks, numbers scrawled like secrets. A river bend marked with an X. Then he whispered, "My father, he draw, he say, never forget." Lena's heart twisted. The weight of inheritance. A father teaching a son to remember what should have been lost. And now the son carried the burden like a soldier who had never been given the choice. Before she could speak, Mason's radio hissed, static, then a voice tense, urgent. "Contact West Ridge. Movement too many to count." Lena's stomach turned to stone. The boy flinched at the sound. Mason was already on his feet, rifle in hand. Lena touched the boy's shoulder, steadying. "It's starting," she said quietly. The compound erupted. Boots pounding, shouted orders, floodlights snapping on. The colonel's voice cut through it all, crisp, commanding, "Positions, do not let them breach." Lena grabbed the boy's hand. "Stay close to me." He nodded, wide-eyed, clutching the book under his arm. Mason covered their flank as they pushed toward the inner barricade. And then through the chaos, she saw him. The scarred commander, standing just beyond the floodlights, calm amid the storm, his gaze locked on the boy. He didn't shout. He didn't fire. He only raised a hand, slow, deliberate. A gesture, come to me. The boy froze, his breath hitched, his grip on Lena's hand went slack. No, she whispered, pulling him close. But in that instant she understood. The boy knew him. Not as stranger, not as enemy. As something else. And the storm broke over them like fire. Why did the boy stop running? Bullets screamed past the barricades, floodlights shuddered in the dust, men shouted orders that dissolved into chaos. But Lena felt only the small hand slip from hers. The boy had gone still, rooted in the dirt, his eyes locked on the figure in the dark. The scarred commander. He stood with that terrible patience as if the battle wasn't raging around him. A silhouette carved by searchlights, scar bisecting his cheek, gaze fixed on the child like gravity itself. He didn't fire, didn't move, he just waited. Lena crouched, her good shoulder screaming as she pulled the boy close again. "We have to move," she hissed. But the boy shook his head, a tiny motion, trembling, his lips parted. A word escaped, not English, not hers, one syllable heavy with recognition. "Bye-bye." The word cut sharper than any round. Lena froze. Mason, firing from cover beside her, whipped his head around. What did he say? The boy's voice cracked. "Father." The ground tilted beneath Lena. The commander wasn't just chasing the book. He was chasing blood, his own son. Another explosion tore the perimeter wall, spraying stone and fire. Soldiers screamed. The compound began to collapse in places, sandbags shredding under endless fire. The colonel's voice barked from somewhere unseen. "Hold the line. Do not let them through." But Lena knew lines didn't hold against truths like this. She pulled the boy tighter, shielding his head as shrapnel whined past. Mason slammed another magazine home, covering their flank. His face was pale under grime. "Voss, tell me I didn't hear that right." "You heard it," she said flatly. Mason swore under his breath. "So what the hell do we do now? Hand him over." The boy was crying silently now, tears cutting tracks down his dirt-caked cheeks. He held the book tighter as if it could choose for him. His small chest heaved. Between sobs he whispered, "Father, say remember. Not go with him. Remember." Lena's throat tightened. The boy was caught between blood and betrayal. A father who had given him a burden too heavy, and soldiers who had given him a choice too cruel. Another blast rocked the compound. Floodlights shattered. The darkness surged closer, voices shouting in a language Lena half knew. The scarred commander stepped forward through the haze, hands still outstretched. Not pleading, demanding, a gesture both paternal and ruthless. The colonel's voice cut through the din, closer now, sharp as a blade. "Voss, you have the asset, secure him. Do not, under any circumstances, let him go." "Asset. Not child, not son, asset." Lena looked at the boy, then at Mason. Mason's jaw clenched. "It's on you, Captain. What's the play?" Time slowed. She saw her brother's face, younger than this boy, clutching a notebook that no one ever saved. She remembered the nights of smoke, the silence that followed. She remembered her own father's absence, the way the world stole people and called it necessity. She rose into a crouch, pulling the boy to his feet. "We move," she said. Mason covered her without question. They darted through rubble, ducking low, weaving between broken walls. Every step Lena expected the commander's shot, but he didn't fire. He only followed, slow, inexorable, his men cutting deeper into the compound. They reached the southern breach where dust choked the air. The evac zone was gone, too hot, too exposed. Soldiers were falling back, dragging wounded. Radios crackled with confusion. Lena pressed the boy against the stone, meeting his wide eyes. "Listen to me. You are not him. You don't have to go with him. You carry your father's book, not his chains. Do you understand?" The boy's lip trembled. He nodded once, small, fierce. Mason covered the corner, gunfire blazing. "We're running out of time, Voss." The commander's voice rang out over the chaos then. "Calm. measured in English. Lena Voss. Her name, spoken like he had always known it. She froze, the boy whimpered. Mason swore. You cannot keep him, the commander said, voice carrying through smoke. He is mine, my blood, my heir. Lena felt her chest tighten. She shouted back, though her voice cracked with fury. He's a child, not your weapon. The commander stepped into the flood of firelight, face hard, scar twisting with his words. You know as well as I, children do not choose. They inherit, as you inherited your war, as he inherits mine. Her hands shook. The boy clutched her sleeve, whispering again, remember. It was the only weapon he had, and the only answer she needed. She raised her rifle, not at the commander's chest, not at his head, but at the ground between them, stone shattering in sparks. The message was clear. You'll have to kill me first. The commander's eyes narrowed. For a heartbeat, silence fell between volleys. Men on both sides hesitated, watching, waiting. Then, unexpected, he smiled. A slow, broken smile. This is not the end, he said. Then he melted back into the smoke, calling his fighters with him. A retreat, not defeat, but delay. Lena sagged against the wall, her body trembling with exhaustion. Mason exhaled hard, lowering his weapon. He let us go, he muttered. No, Lena said quietly. He let him go for now. The compound burned through the night. Medics worked by headlamp, pulling wounded from the rubble. The colonel moved among them like a shadow, barking, demanding. When he reached Lena, his face was stone. You defied me again. She met his gaze, too drained for fear. I saved him again. His jaw flexed. He said nothing more. He turned and walked away. Later, in the dim quiet of her tent, Lena sat beside the boy as he slept. The book lay open on her knees. Pages filled with maps, symbols, fragments of a father's hand. A legacy both dangerous and fragile. She traced the lines, thinking of her brother, of choices that had been stolen, of dignity that never raised its voice but always bore its weight. Mason slipped in, silent, settling beside her. You think he'll come again? She didn't look up. Yes. Mason nodded, eyes heavy. Then what? Lena closed the book gently, set it by the boy's pillow. Then we do what he asked. We remember. Outside, the compound smoldered. Inside, the boy slept without clutching the book for the first time. His hands were empty, free for now. And in that silence, the kind that lingers after fire dies, Lena understood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.